All right, I think we got time for one more. Let's do number 4. Suppose that sine is equal to 2 over 3. So remember, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if you draw a triangle, and this is the angle theta, then sine would be opposite over hypotenuse. So this is the angle, that means this is the opposite. This would be the hypotenuse across from 90. And then for this side down here, we could label it with some letter like A, and then do the Pythagorean theorem to find out what that side is equal to. So that would leave us with a squared plus 4 is equal to 9. And then subtract 4 from both sides, so it's going to leave 5. And then square root. So a is equal to the square root of 5. Now find all of the remaining trig functions. So I like to write them in this order. So sine is equal to cosine is equal to tangent is equal to a fraction. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse is cosine. Opposite over adjacent is tangent. So some people use SOHCAHTOA to remember the trig functions. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent opposite over adjacent. Personally, I use Oscar had a heap of apples. So Mr. Bellman taught me that when I was a junior in high school, and I still use it to this day. When I was writing these down, you didn't hear me, but inside my head, I was saying Oscar had a heap of apples. Okay, now sine would be opposite over hypotenuse, so 2/3. And you're saying, well, you already had that one, so why are you writing it down? Well, because we're going to have to do the other 3 trig functions, and I prefer to have the first 3, so I know that I get the next 3 correct. So cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent would be opposite over adjacent. And this radical 5, you can leave it in the denominator. You do not have to rationalize the denominator. If somebody told you you always have to, don't believe them. You can leave it like that. Okay, so now the other 3 trig functions. So cosecant goes across from sine, and it is just the reciprocal of sine. So just invert this fraction to get 3 over 2. Across from cosine is secant, and then invert this fraction to get 3 over square root of 5. And finally, across from tangent will be cotangent, and just do the reciprocal. So it's going to be the square root of 5 over 2. And there are all of the 6 trig functions. Now the only thing is, it said quadrant 2. And that part is telling us, are we supposed to have positives or negatives? A smart trig class tells you when they are positive. And if we are in quadrant 2, that means sine is positive, and then cosine and tangent would be negative. Now to finish it up, just take these 3 sines and transform over here as well. This one will be positive, and then negative and negative. And now we're done with the whole thing.